The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Wednesday, May 6, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. Right here in the state of Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery, 25-year-old. He was chased and gunned down back in February. And the video just was released yesterday showing the gruesome murder of this young man as he was jogging, literally taking a jog. And he was black and jogging in the wrong neighborhood, apparently, because several neighborhood members, people in the neighborhood, decided that he looked like someone who had robbed someone the week before. Translation, he was black. And they took it upon themselves to hunt him down, and they shot him dead in the streets with their shotguns. And finally, since the video, and only because the video has been released, he is being, the two men involved are being charged. Well, at least a grand jury is being convened. Greg McMichaels is and his father, Travis McMichaels. They are going to potentially face charges. They claim that they were acting within this quote unquote scope of a citizen's arrest. I didn't share the video on my timeline for obvious reasons, because it's just, I'm tired of seeing people die, but I'm tired of seeing black men get killed and assaulted by the police. It is just another day in America. And where the conversation is going to fall along the political lines, the political talking points. Conservatives are going to find a way to oppose this, to oppose any charges being filed against this man. Hell, some liberals for that matter. White folks, you're going to have a lot of white folks find a way to justify this. And then you're going to have some white folks who share it. And I'm just tired of it all the way around the board. Because here we go again, even in the middle of at the time, it was the beginning of the pandemic. The disease that strikes at the heart of America, that was here before COVID-19, is the disease of white supremacy and racism. And it has been here since the beginning of this country, in which a young man taking a jog becomes a target in something that looks like it's straight out of the 60s, rednecks on the back of a truck hunting down the Negro. That's exactly what the video looks like. I shouldn't have watched the video, but I watched it because it was everywhere. And then you can't help but just let it play. It auto plays on social media, so you just kind of let it play. Goddamn America. Goddamn this country and its stupidity and its barbarity, its deeply seated racism and hatred of anything that's not white conservative Christian men. It is so deeply rooted in this country. It is to the point where this country deserves everything that it gets. It does. We try our best to preserve this country. We try our best to preserve the system because we're here in it, and changing it brings a level of fear. But what else can we do at this point? You see the police officers. There's a tweet. You see what's going on in New York. There's the concentration of deaths due to COVID-19, infection and death due to COVID-19 in New York can be seen based on your zip code, based on the particular part of the city that you live in. And in the black sides of town, well, it's highly concentrated infections as well as death. In the white sides of town, they're good. Some people getting sick, some people dying, yeah, but it's not highly concentrated like it is in the black neighborhood. So even in this pandemic, the racial component is stark. I mean, even in the recovery, we see that the majority of African-American businesses, the majority, obviously, let's just set aside the fact that working people have been abandoned. Working people of all races have been abandoned. Let's just set that aside. You could see in the bailout that has gone to corporations and businesses has gone overwhelmingly to white businesses. No matter. So when we say that capitalism, particularly like black capitalism, won't save you, black capitalism won't save you. It won't save our community. And it certainly won't save you, the business owner, because you're at the back of the bus in terms of getting any help from this government. And meanwhile, the average citizen, the average marginalized community, minority community is being attacked, not only by the coronavirus, but it's also being attacked by authorities. You see the videos coming out of New York. The black side of town is being devastated not only by the virus, but also, and I'm starting to think, also by the police. And I'm starting to think that the cruel harassment and abuse and the terrorizing of the black community that's happening right now in New York City probably is the effort of the NYPD to keep the coronavirus inside of the black sides of town. That's so because the white communities, they're out there chilling at the parks. And there's a picture that was posted by the NYPD on Twitter today, actually earlier this week. And it showed a nice, friendly police officer handing a nice Karen a mask. And this is what it says. It said, "No mask, no problem. This park goer in Domino Park didn't have a mask. No problem. Our task force officers were more than happy to provide her with one." Meanwhile, in the black community, they're literally stomping our heads in the ground. So depending on what side of town you're on, determines the treatment, the stark treatment. They're rubbing it in our faces at this point. You go to Harlem, you have the highest concentration in all of the city. South Bronx, Lower East Side, East New York, Flatbush, Bed-Stuy. All of these communities have been devastated by this pandemic, but they're being doubly devastated by the abuse of the police force. So you juxtapose the treatment that black people are getting and black communities are getting as a result of one, it's as a result of the fact that black people and minorities are overwhelmingly essential workers. And so, yes, because we have to have our essential workers on the front line, we're going to be disproportionately infected as well as affected. But not only are we dying for pennies. Essential workers, in some cases are getting minimum wage. They're certainly not getting a livable wage. So not only are they dying as a result of their work and their labor, they're being abused, harassed, targeted, and concentrated in one small area of their city. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, on the other side of the proverbial tracks, the white folks are doing just fine. Just fine. The cops are walking in the parks and handing them their mask and treating them like they're human beings. Now, don't get it twisted. Because of the obscene level of ignorance in this country, it's not just going to be black folks at the end of the day. We're just the front line. We're getting hit hard right now. Yeah, but because of the obscene level of just sheer gross stupidity, there's going to be a lot of white folks going to do a whole lot of dying. A lot of rich folks are going to do a whole lot of dying because of the stupidity of this country. The protests, the mass protests. We've seen an uptick in every city that has had a protest, every city and every state that has reopened. We're seeing upticks in the number of cases, and inevitably we're going to see an uptick in deaths. So we're looking at going to about 3,000 deaths per day. That's one 9/11 every single day. Listen to this report.
Today reveals that behind the scenes, Trump's own administration is predicting that coronavirus will imminently take a disastrous turn for the worse. The daily death rate will soon nearly double, approaching 3,000 deaths a day in the U.S. by June 1st. That's less than a month away. And that's not all. The New York Times writes this, quote, "The projections based on government modeling pulled together in chart form by the Federal Emergency Management Agency forecast about 200,000 new cases each day by the end of the month. That's up from 25,000 cases now. The numbers underscore a sobering reality. While the U.S. has been hunkered down for the past 7 weeks, not much has changed, and the reopening to the economy will make matters worse.
Jesus Christ. I mean, we're in for a shit show, folks. 3,000 people a day, 200,000 cases a day, new cases a day. And the federal government's response is to shut down they're literally throwing us to the wolves here. They're just throwing us out here to this pandemic and letting us figure out how to survive ourselves. Meat factories are closing all around the country because, well, you know, people are getting sick. I mean, we called this months ago. And yet our America is so stupid. America is so goddamn stupid that it is doing it to itself. It is the combination of our political system, our hyper-partisanship. It is a combination of our ridiculous media infrastructure, our media outlets who don't know how to ask the pertinent questions like why, you know, that don't do basic follow-up. It's the problem of our political class as well as the people and the voters, the electorate, right? You got half the electorate who's like, open us back up, open up the country. You know, our leaders, our political leaders, there's no opposition to Donald Trump. So, of course, Donald Trump is get to do whatever the hell he wants to do. We're the Democrats in the full court press opposition. When history looks back, they're not going to be able to say that there was any significant opposition from our political leaders. And because there's no opposition, they are too responsible for what's getting ready to happen. That's the level of stupidity that's going on. 3,000 people a day. 3,000 people a day with no end in sight. We have no predicted end in sight for this pandemic. We don't even know if we're immune to it after we survive it. And we don't even know if there is a vaccine that's actually going to work. We're just counting on a vaccine to work. And yet America has made all of the very worst choices possible in terms of exacerbating the situation. We could have mitigated the losses. We could have minimized the amount of time that we have to stay indoors, even if that means coming out afterwards means that we have a totally different country, right? And we do things differently and we all wear a mask and we, certain industries just are not going to ever recover because, there's going to be things that would have had to be different regardless because we would not have had a cure or a vaccine. But if we had hunkered down successfully for like 2 months, if we had just shut this thing down, but no, our corporations were too concerned about their quarterly profit margins. Our small business owners were, they were concerned about making pay. I get it. If you're a real small business owner, I get it. But that's because those are choices that our government has made. We decided not to give the people enough money to shelter in place and then find other ways to consume, right? We decided not to give the money to these business owners to maintain payroll, right? We wouldn't even give it to them to maintain payroll. I get that this country is completely opposed to ever doing anything for the people, like putting money directly into the people's hands, but they would not even give the money to the business owners to maintain payroll during this shutdown. They did not. We literally did everything wrong, except for the fact that I saw a report, 75% of Americans are sheltering in place. That was the only thing that we did right. We did that right without the government having to tell us to do so. And I'm actually kind of amazed that the number is that high. Actually, please, like that is the only saving grace. Otherwise, I mean, and then don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. There are plenty of cities that have opened up, people who are going out to the parks, and all that shit is going to end pretty soon when start coughing up blood. Okay? When they start suffocating. So with the exception of all of us who have chosen to stay in place, who have made the decision and were able to do so, shout out to all of our essential workers who don't have that option. Man, I'm praying for y'all every day and we're fighting for you every day. But for those of us who were able to do so and we chose to stay in place, we're like the only thing in this system that did the right thing. Everything else went the wrong way. Corporations, business owners, politicians, And even a good portion of the electorate who are now out there demanding that the government reopen, that the economy reopen. And now we're facing 3,000 deaths a day. This is the Trump administration estimate, which means probably it's going to be higher on average. But here we are, earning the fruits of our stupidity. God damn America.
www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
I just had to let it breathe just a little bit more. Here we go. Very special welcome and thank you to all of our newest patrons without whom this show is not possible. Welcome aboard to Leah Boggs Jackson, Carl Anderson, Melissa Bird. Thank you all so much for becoming patrons. And last but not least, Seamus McGinnis. Thank you for becoming a patron. Let's vibe out for a second. Let me see you bob. It's okay if we just, wash it all away with a little go-go. Bring it back in. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you'll get twice the content, access to uncut and unedited interviews, and none of the commercial advertisements like you'll get right here.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back. All right, so all of that other drama set aside, I know it's not drama, it's very serious topics that we're talking about, but I just wanted to pause and bring in a friend of mine, Jeff Waldorf of Around the Nation. You know him off of Twitter at Jeff's Politics. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me, man. How's it going?
Pretty good, Ben. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. Like this is, I was just on your show. We spoke on Saturday, and I know that episode is that episode out already?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I need to go listen to it and share it myself. And that was my second time being on your show. And I definitely wanted and been thinking over the years to get you on the show, but I'm like, you know what? Now's as good a time as any. So we were talking on Saturday and we got cut off, because of some things on my end, but we're really just talking about how things have changed so dramatically where we really can't go with, it seems like the only option is radicalization. And what I mean by that really is like, we can't play around with the system anymore. Like we can't play at all because the system is really trying to quite literally send us outside into a pandemic in order to keep their profit margins going. What's your take on that?
Well, obviously, it's a bad idea. It's a terrible idea. It goes against the science. It goes against the entire idea of being, pro-life, basically.
Right.
I mean, they want to say pro-life on the one hand, and all lives matter, but also kill the weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of a conflicting message.
And they're literally saying this, right? This is not hyperbole. I saw a sign at one protest that said, sacrifice the weak. And then you had Ben Shapiro go on Dave Rubin, who basically said, Nana and Pop, they're cool, but they live their lives. Let's get this economy open up again. That's really what they're doing. So are you, in terms of your broadcast, in terms of your audience, like what are they feeling? Because I'm going to be honest with you, man, I'm tired of talking about it. And because talking about it, you start repeating yourself over and over and over again. And it's like, what do you do now? Like you've said all that needs to be said. At some point, something's got to change. How are you feeling in terms of your conversations with your audience, and how's your audience feeling?
I've been talking about a general strike. I'm at that point, right? A general strike. Stop working, stop consuming. That's it. Like that's the only way that we're ever going to have any sort of impact on our governmental system. And largely from what I've seen in the comments, my audience seems to agree. Like, hey, it's not just general strike. We also got to do boycotts. I read a comment earlier today on my YouTube feed when I talked about doing a general strike. And they're like, well, it's not going to work unless you stop, buying things from these businesses, from these companies.
Yep.
Now, I would say stop buying stuff from big corporations, while you do a general strike. But, if you have a local business, well, that does matter, right? These local businesses do serve the community, and they're not the same, they're not that same kind of evil. They're not the ones that are really pushing people to reopen. I remember talking about a business in Georgia that said, hey, look, I don't want to open. I'm not interested in opening right now. I care about my customers and I care about my employees. So even if the state's opening up, I'm still not going to open until I know that it's safe. And that is a responsible business owner.
Right.
And I'm not saying that all small businesses are responsible like that, but I am saying that there are good small business owners that actually do care about regular people, as opposed to the giant multinationals that are, run by these corporate boards, and their entire fiduciary responsibility is to maximize profit for the shareholders.
Right. Even at the expense of human lives.
Exactly.
We see that with
especially.
Amazon. Yeah, I mean, and so that's so a couple of things in that, and I'm glad you brought up the consumer strike, the general strike, because I think it has to happen on both sides. And I feel compelled to push the consumer side of it, because that's literally where I can make my sacrifice. We're asking workers. We're asking a lot of workers, when that means in some cases they lose income. They could potentially lose their job. Look at Christian Smalls, right? We live in a very anti-worker, anti-labor environment, definitely an anti-union environment. So a lot of these employees are working for organizations where they're not even unionized.
And it's designed that way, by the way. It's designed to where if you do an action like a general strike, you are going to lose everything. And it will be a gigantic sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's designed like we have state governments right now that are saying, all right, if you get called back to work, you're going to lose your unemployment benefits. We got one $1,200 check, which, by the way, I got today.
Oh, congratulations!
And it was needed, but certainly
not
ain't
enough.
It's not It's not enough to stretch. Obviously, in the entirety of this crisis, people like got rents and mortgages, and that check gets eaten up immediately by one of those bills.
Yeah.
And so that's not enough. And so this is by design.
Right.
They made sure to give you just barely enough and sometimes not even enough to survive. And then they tell you, well, the only option that you have is to go back to work, or else you're going to lose your home. Right. Now, right now, some places have done moratoriums on temporary moratoriums on evictions, but not rent freezes. And of course, that is also by design to make sure that the bills continue to have to get paid and you have to get that income. So to compel you to get back to work as soon as possible, then you have these astroturfed protests that are funded by groups that are backed by Betsy DeVos that are pushing people to go out and protest. Hey, it's your freedom. It's my body. It's my decision whether or not to spread coronavirus to my entire community. That's my decision. And so all this, of course, is designed to push people to get back into the markets. And this is backed up, of course, by, you've got right-wing pundits. You've got Texas Governor Greg Abbott going on the record, during a call and saying, hey, you know what, this is going to cost a lot of lives, but we really don't care. We're going to send people back to work anyway. And so this whole right-wing, ecosphere, I think that's kind of the ecosystem, I should say, that was created to push this narrative of you must go back to work. You will die for capitalism. And that is the way that it is supposed to be. That's what we're living in right now. And that's what we have to oppose with every fiber of our being.
Yeah. I'm glad to have you on the show, man. I always love You know, I do like talking commentator to commentator because it's good to have people who could just like flow, like boom, 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 just hit that shit. You know what I mean? I love these types of conversations. But setting that aside, the camaraderie aside, it is the fact, I love what you pointed out, that this is doing exactly what it's designed to do. They want and need for this system to work, for capitalism to be sustained, and even not even just capitalism, but this particular virulent brand of consumerism, for them to continue hitting those quarterly profit margins. They really need us to go out there and sacrifice our lives. And the only way they can do that, like you said, is to keep us so desperate for our next check. That's why they would not put in a full moratorium on rent, period. Like not just a deferment, but like no rent, like this month. That's why they wouldn't put $2,000. This is the funny thing about it, though. If they had just put $2,000 a month in our hands, we would have consumed our asses off. Everybody would have paid their bills and then consume. And some companies would be hit hard. Other companies would do good. Jeff Bezos would have gotten a lot richer. But instead of doing that, they could not afford to do that, rather, because it would have awakened the body politic to understand the capacity of the government to do more for the people than it has ever done. Meanwhile, they're simultaneously doing more for corporations and billionaires and millionaires than has ever been done, to the tune of, I think, what we're up to, like $7 or $8 trillion.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I talk about on the show all the time. You know, how if they're to actually do what is necessary to be done, they would destroy, and I'm talking about conservatism and conservatives, it would destroy their entire ideology. It would be shown as being completely ideologically and morally bankrupt, as well as, basically, it can't be backed up with any sort of facts or logic. It would be shown to be a complete sham, the sham that it has always been.
Yeah.
And so, their entire ideology is destroy government. Government is not going to help you. Government is not useful. We need to get rid of government. Private industry and charity will step in.
Right.
The benevolent billionaires will create jobs for you and your families, and they will give charity, to places in need, to the churches, which you must go into in order to receive that charity. And so, all of that is their ideology. It's the ideology that protects greed and makes sure that the government can't do anything because we are making sure to not do anything for you.
Right. Jeff, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to cut the conversation here for the public show. You and I are going to skip over and we're going to keep talking on the patrons only show, where we do a whole lot more cussing and a lot more radical talk than I do publicly. But before I let you go off the public show, tell everyone how to get up with you and to watch your show.
Well, I do a live show every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's TYT Nation. That's the channel, YouTube, youtube.com/TYT Nation. I also do a show. Here's the thing, on the weekends,
That's right.
It gets released for my patrons first, but normally drops at about Sunday. That's why I talk with fellow hosts. That's where I talk with Benjamin Dixon at Farron Cousins. I'm going to talk with Michael Brooks here in this weekend. And so check those out. Become a patron, subscribe to the show. Thank you, Ben.
No, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk more in a second. You, as always, can get access to the full conversation. You can get access to that by becoming a patron, patreon.com/the BPD show. We talked for another 15 minutes. He has some really great insights. We talked about the attempted Venezuela coup. That's in the patron section, as well as a conversation on Bernie Sanders being back on the ballot in New York, thanks to a lawsuit brought by Andrew Yang. So I got a chance to talk with Jeff about that as well. Check out this final headline from NBC News. A Native American health center asked for COVID-19 supplies. Instead, it got body bags. I want to read a little portion of this. A community health center caring for the area's Native American population made an urgent request to county, state, and federal health agencies in Seattle, saying, please send medical supplies. What it received almost 3 weeks later left the staff members stunned. This is a quote saying, my team turned ghost white, said Esther Lucero, chief executive officer of the Seattle Indian Health Board. We asked for tests and they sent us a box of body bags. The Health Board Center, serving about 6,000 people a year in Seattle and King County, still has the package, which was filled with zipper bag white bags and beige tags that read "attached to tow." There's really no need for me to try to explain this, the absurdity of it, the insult of it, but I will say that these bastards are really testing us. They're really testing our patience. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that after the music. In the meantime, thank you everyone for being a part of this experience. Thank you for being a beautiful audience. Patrons, you know what to do. Stay tuned after the music. There's so much more. Everyone else, I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.